It's good to be with you. I'll talk for a little while so the sound technician can get my voice. It's wonderful. All right. Well, it is good to be here with you this morning. It is wonderful. And I thought, with all of the retired ministers you have that attend this church, I thought I would never get a chance to be a guest preacher here at Collier, but then I remembered your retired ministers are all in Florida. So I thought, right on, I get a chance. And you're in for a treat next week with Paul Wilson. And I hope you can all be here and tell friends to come. Paul is a wonderful preacher and has taught preaching for years. And so you're in for one of the United Church's finest old pros as a preacher. So look forward to next week. Now, how many of you are getting tired of winter? Whoa. I'm one of those really obnoxious people who have been saying all along, I love winter. What a great season for skiing. What a great winter we've had until Tuesday morning. In March, when it was minus 18 and a half, and once again my car had trouble starting, I thought, okay, that's enough. That is enough winter. I'm tired of winter. January, minus 18 and a half, okay, but March, no. Enough of winter. And I also know that you as a church have gone through some pretty stormy weather with a review with Toronto Conference. I'm married to one of your ministers. I've heard all about it. And I know the leadership, both lay and clergy, have had a very tiring and emotional time. And my prayers have been with you all along. And to add to that, we're starting Lent, which in some Christian traditions has been a time of penance, where we face our sins and try to be different people in God's power. I just think with all those things, the weather and the review, and now it's Lent, which is kind of a bit of a serious kind of downer time. I think we should pack up and go to Florida with the retired ministers and have a bit of a break. But I'm hoping we're here and we can't. And so I'm hoping that maybe this sermon will put a bit of a different feel into you. I'd like to reframe Lent a little bit and move away from it being a time about being in penance and giving up something. And instead, I'd like us to experience Lent, at least for today, as a season where we all get something. As a season where we all get something. I want to reframe Lent as a time where we remind each other why we're here on earth. I want Lent to be a time where we get reconnected with something really good. I want Lent to be a time where we get connected, we get reminded of who we are as Christ's people. I want this morning to be a time where we get reminded of who we are as God's people. I hope that sounds okay. I hope this will be an encouraging time. Now, I'm going to say one sentence, and if you forget everything else about this sermon, that's great, that's fine. But if you can remember this one sentence, that would be wonderful. So I'm going to give you this one sentence, and I want you to hang on to it. Here it is. Christ's mission is worth a lifetime. Christ's mission is worth a lifetime. Now just tuck that away. Hang on to that. Frank told us a story of Jesus' time in the wilderness. Jesus was led, actually the Greek is driven. Jesus was driven into the wilderness by God, by God's Spirit. And we all have visions of what the wilderness is. I have a friend named Barb who has a definition of wilderness, going off into the wilds for her. It's going to a Comfort Inn instead of a 5-star Marriott hotel. That's wilderness. And even when we get into real wilderness, we want to sanitize it. We want to make it more comfortable. Killarney Provincial Park is up near Sudbury, Ontario. And it has a comment box, so when you leave the park, you can throw your comments in. And these are actual comments that people made as they left Killarney Provincial Park. Here's one. Trails need to be reconstructed. Please avoid building trails that go uphill. Isn't that great? Please pave the hiking trails so they can be plowed of snow in the winter. That's an interesting comment. Here's another one. Too many bugs and leeches and spiders and spider webs. Please spray the wilderness to rid the area of these pests. Wilderness. And Gillian up there, we've been on a canoe trip together. We know that wilderness is a strange and dangerous place. Where Jesus lived, wilderness was more like a desert. During the day, it was burning hot. And at night, freezing cold. The landscape of the wilderness was constantly being changed and shaped by the wind. The landscape was never the same. And there was almost no water at all. It was a strange and dangerous place. And the story goes that Jesus was driven into that wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights. That's Bible speak for a long time. 40 days and 40 nights. And Jesus, after all this time, was famished, hungry. He was hollowed out inside. He was hollowed out. And when a human being is hollowed out, that hollowed out space wants to be filled. We want to fill it with something. Now remember that it was God's Spirit that led Jesus out into that wilderness and hollowed Jesus out. And it was the Spirit of God who wanted to see what Jesus would fill that hollowed out place with. So along comes the tempter, devil, Satan, a peon, really, in this story, because the story is really about Jesus. And this tempter invites Jesus to fill that hollowed out space with stuff. You're famished, you're hollowed out, Jesus. Make these stones into bread and eat. You're famished, you're hollowed out with boredom, Jesus. Here, jump off this pinnacle, and the angels will catch you. Real thrill of a lifetime. Ah, you're famished, Jesus. You're hollowed out with loneliness. Here, worship power, and you'll have people, all kinds of people, falling at your feet. And each time, Jesus said to that minuscule devil, "It's not my purpose to fill my hollowness inside with that stuff. My purpose is to be God's person and fill my hollowness with God and God's way for me first and foremost." I love Jesus. And This is why I follow him, because he knows his purpose for living even when he is at his most vulnerable. Now, I think we all have hollowed out times in our lives too. And there's an acronym that I want to share with you this morning to introduce to you what I think spells out some of the ways that we as human beings have hollowed out times. And these hollowed out times, it's just what being human is. We all have them. They're not bad, they're not good, they just are. And the word that I want to share with you that will spell out is the word HALT. H-A-L-T. H-A-L-T. H is for hungry. Like Jesus, when we are hungry, there is a hollowed out place inside us. And that hunger just isn't for food, though it could well be. There are many people in our community within 100 yards or 100 meters of this church who are hungry physically. But we can also be some of the hungriest people on earth, even though we are fed with abundant food. We can be hungry for money, especially when we're in debt. Been reading in the papers about how the debt levels of Canadians have risen. And when we're hollowed out with hunger because we are such debt, some play the lottery in hopes of addressing, filling that hollow place. Or because our house prices here in Barrie have gone up and up and up, we can borrow more against our house and go into more debt and accumulate more stuff. And that might fill that hollow place for a while, but then the anxiety comes back. I wonder what would fill that hunger, that real human hunger. What would fill it with joy? Free from anxiety and stress. I wonder. H is for hunger. A is for anger. Like Jesus, when we get angry, there is a hollowed out place inside us that wants to be filled. And we can fill that hollowed out place inside with revenge if we choose. If we're angry with somebody, we can start to say all kinds of nasty things about them in the workplace or in the community. We can say lots of awful things about them that isolates them and hurts them because they've hurt us. And that way, we can fill that hollowed out place inside of us with revenge. But I wonder what would fill that angry place that leads to things of Jesus Christ, like compassion, like forgiveness. I wonder. H is for hunger. L is for anger. H, I can spell, just a minute. H is for hungry. A is for anger. L is for loneliness. Like Jesus, when we are lonely, there is a hollowed out place inside of us that needs to be filled. The other day, I went shopping in the Georgian Mall. I wanted to buy socks. It's a big deal for me. I love socks. My definition of real wealth is having enough underwear and socks. That is my definition of real wealth. You got to know. Okay, I got to tell you the story. We're going to hold the sermon for a second. I'm going to tell you the story. When I was in theological college, I was 24 years old. I was living on $8,000 a year. Yay, student! It was such a great time in life, right? And we were comparing the number of pairs of underwear that we owned as theological students. And I said I owned 4. I owned 4 pairs. And Nobuko, a person of Japanese descent, was horrified that I only had 4 pairs of underwear. And she went out and the next day in my study cubicle were a dozen pairs of white, pristine underwear. And I thought, from Nobuko, and I thought I had died and gone to heaven. So I was in Georgian Mall, and I wanted to buy socks. Sorry, I'm getting back to the sermon here now. And it was one of the loneliest walks that I've ever had. I never realized it before. Even in a mall that was chocked full of people. There was people everywhere, but everyone was so tunnel vision on where they were getting to buy the next thing. Everyone was in their own little world. And there was no interaction going. Nobody was stopping in the mall heated sidewalks to talk. It was boom, boom, people, tons of people around me, but absolutely no relationship going on. And I thought to myself, wow, we can go through life thinking that we've got this lonely place and we're filling it with tons of people around us. But my goodness, I've got lots of friends on Facebook. How many friends do you have? I have people I don't even know who are my friends on Facebook. What is that about? I can have tons of people in my life, but I have no relationship with them. I wonder what would fill that lonely place that leads to things of Jesus, like sharing from our hearts with each other. Friends invested in each other. Deep companionship. I wonder what we can bring into our lives that fills that hollow place. So H is for hungry, A is for angry, L is for lonely, T is for tired. T is for tired. Like Jesus, we get tired, and there is a hollowed out place inside of us that needs to be filled. It's human to be tired. It's human to have overextended. And sometimes we fill that hollow place by pushing ourselves more, by chastising ourselves for being weak, by heaping on ourselves guilt and shame and high expectations. And I wonder what would fill that tired place that leads to the things of Jesus, like rest. Jesus was always going off to pray and to rest. That would lead to renewal. That would lead to freedom from guilt and shame. And that would only lead us to love for ourselves, compassion for ourselves when we're tired, to lead us to a blessed weakness, and celebrate that. Halt. Hunger, anger, A for anger, L for loneliness, T for tired. These are all human needs. How we fill those needs, those hollow places, depends if we want to give our lives to the mission of Christ. Do you remember that opening sentence I gave you? The mission of Christ is worth a lifetime. Let's say it together. The mission of Christ is worth a lifetime. I think we've got it. I believe that the mission of Christ is worth a lifetime because it is the way that what Jesus talked about, I've come to give you life and to give it abundantly. I think it's the way that we find and can be filled in those hollow places with God's joy. It's the way of being content with enough so that others may have something. It's this way of never seeking revenge, but only living in compassion and forgiveness, which means not being a doormat that people can walk all over us, but giving up the right to get even and being kind and loving to our enemies, which means seeing Christ in them and leaving the way open, even if it's a crack, for a restored relationship. It's the way of connecting deeply with each other and being transformed by those relationships. It's the way of loving oneself, having compassion and being vulnerable and weak in the culture's eyes, not tough and pushy. That's the way of Jesus, the mission of Jesus that confounded people yet attracted them. This weak, vulnerable, forgiving, compassionate, loving way of Jesus filled their empty places like nothing else could. They found out with the grace of God that the mission of Christ is worth a lifetime. It gave those Christians a great sense of purpose in their living. Jesus was led into the wilderness, and there he was tempted to be what God would have not liked at all. Strong, power-hungry, self-centered, unforgiving egomaniac. Thank God Jesus was true to himself and his God and his God-given purpose. His mission to love so thoroughly, a forgiveness so full of grace, a compassion so abundant, a weakness and vulnerability so powerful that the world has never been the same since. Oh my, how full of purpose we can be if we just gave and sought out a fraction of Jesus' mission for our own lives. And I believe we can. Christ's mission is worth a lifetime, yours and mine. And for that we can say, thanks be to God. Amen. We're going to sing now in Voices United, number 694. To us all, every nation, 694.